Om. Dhyayamo dhulavagunthanavatim tejomyim naishtikim snigdha pangavilokinim bhagavatim mandasmidashremukhim valsalyamritavarshinim sumadhuram sankirtanalapinim Shamangim madhusikta suktim amridanandatmikam ishwarim Om Amriteshwariyai Namah Om Amriteshwariyai Namah Om Amriteshwariyai Namah Om Amriteshwariyai Namah. We'll begin with a short meditation. Kindly sit straight and make sure your vertebral column, your spinal column is erect. Watch your breath for just a couple of moments, and as you keep watching, slowly close your eyes as you relax. And feel the relaxation. Let's now chant Om 3 times. And as we chant Om, imagine the sound of Om to arise deep within you from the navel area. And visualize the sound coming up along your spine, cleansing your body, your mind, and your intellect. Now kindly take a deep breath. Now feeling the reverberations of Om in each and every particle of your body. Feel the relaxation as well as the vibrations of Om. And now slowly become aware of your breathing. Again, breathing normally but with full awareness of each and every inhalation and exhalation that occurs through your body. Just watch your body as if it's like an instrument, a flute, where the air just comes in and goes out. And now as you breathe in, chant the mantra, the syllable Ma, along with your in-breath. And hold your breath just for a few seconds. Don't hold it too long. And then when you breathe out, chant Om. So Ma, when you breathe in, hold your breath. Om, when you breathe out. Continue like this for some time. Ma. Hold your breath. Om. Ma. Om. Make sure your breathing is in a rhythm. And keep your mind focused on the breathing process and the Ma Om. Slowly and slowly the reverberations of Ma and Om become more and more softer and subtle. And just feel only the vibrations of Ma and Om within you, not the physical sound. Ma is a representation of divine love, and Om of divine light. And feel the love and light in your heart as the light and love fills your heart. Feel the expansion of the heart. Feel the heart expanding just like the universe or the ocean. Encompassing everything, all beings. Just feel the love for everything in this world. And thereby the oneness. Imagine a ray of light going out from your heart to all the beings in this world, just like the rays of the sun. And as the light falls on each and every one of them, visualize they also become more loving, more peaceful, more blissful, and more silent. And while imagining so, let's chant the prayer Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu 9 times. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. 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 Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. How's the sound? Om Dhyayamo Dhavalabhagunthanavatим Tejomayim Nashtakim Snigdha Pangavilokinim Bhagavatim मन्दस्मितश्रीमुखे वात्सल्यामृतवर्षिणीं सुमधुरं सङ्कीर्तनालापिनीं श्यामाङ्गीं मधुसिक्तसूक्तिम् अमृतानन्दात्मिकाम् ईश्वरीम् ॐ नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रं पराशरं च व्यासं शुगं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रम् अधस्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यम् अधस्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तं तोडकं वार्तिककार्यमन्यान् अस्मद्गुरुन् सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि। ॐ गुरुब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुस्साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। Om Amriteshwarya Namah. In the last session, we saw that the fight between Indra and Virtra, the demon. And he is saying, Virtra was saying that to Indra, actually he was giving a very spiritual, great spiritual teaching, even at the time of death, saying that, he is just like a wooden doll figuring a woman or a mechanically worked animal. All creatures in this world are subject to the control of the Lord. And he was saying that no being neither Pragrati or Purusha, nor the great element, and nor senses, that the Indriyas, not one of them can project this universe without his grace and blessing. And he said, man is ignorant of this, and when time is favorable, man is blessed with longevity, prosperity, fame, plenty, and the goodwill of all. And when the time is unfavorable, everything will go away. So he said, therefore, one should remain unperturbed in all situations, whether in fame or in disrepute, in success or in failure, in life or death. And he's saying that he's free from bondage who realizes that the Atman is the only witness of all the bodily and mental transformations and not involved in them. And he said that the devotion to Vasudeva, or the Supreme Lord, is what one has to develop. And he was in the time of even death also, he was telling the Indra to whirl the Vajrayuda, his thunderbolt, and cut his body. And when Virtra died, what happened was all the great beings extolled, and they were resounding all the kettles, drums, and all these things, because Virtra did not die an ordinary death. So when Indra looked at this, he was perplexed, because Virtra, being a demon, should not have any knowledge of spirituality. And instead, there he is dying, giving out a beautiful sermon to Indra. So Indra went and resolved, and he did the purification for Brahmahatya. Brahmahatya means killing of a Brahmana, and especially like Virtra. And hearing this story, Raja Parikshit, who was listening it from Lord Shuka, had a beautiful question. And he said, how did this Virtra, this demon, whose nature was rooted in Rajas and Tamas, and who was very sinful, have such a firm devotion on Narayana, on the Supreme Lord, the inner being of all, inner pervader of all beings. So he said, even in Devas, that is all the gods who are endowed with the quality of Sattva, and in great rishis who have attained purity of mind, this kind of devotion cannot be found. And he said, even among the people who are alive, few are aspirants for mukti, that is liberation. And then he said that amongst such, only a few, handful, realize the Atman. And he said, only a few people have such perfect equipoise and single-hearted ecstatic love for the Lord. So how did Virtra get this? So hearing this, Sri Shuka, who listened to this, said, this is a beautiful question, what you have asked. And as I said, when we meet great saints like Amma, the questions that we should ask are such type of spiritual questions. Otherwise, if we ask, when is my son going to get married, or when my daughter is getting married, or when will I get a promotion, all these things are, it's not that you should not ask, but it's nothing when compared to what Amma can give you as a spiritual teaching when compared to the worldly attainments. So Sri Shuka said, listen, O king, to the traditional account on this subject, which I heard from Veda Vyasa, Narada and Devala. So he heard it from his own father, Veda Vyasa, and the great sage Narada. And in the land of Surasena, which is near Mathura, the birthplace of Lord Krishna, there was a famous emperor named Chitraketu, in whose region the earth yielded all the requirements of man. That king had many wives, but every one of them was barren, and the king was therefore without any issue. Though possessed of all desirable endowments like beauty, generosity, youth, high birth, learning, lordliness, and wealth, he was very much worried about his wives being barren and he without being an issue. Neither wealth, nor his numerous beautiful wives, nor his vast empire could give him happiness under the above circumstances. So it's a beautiful teaching here. Even if you are an emperor and who has several wives, you have all kind of possessions in this world, and one small thing can trouble you and make you unhappy. So once the worshipful rishi Angiras happened to arrive at the king's palace in the course of his peregrinations all over the world. So Angiras keeps going around. As you know, all the rishis, they just keep going around in order to bless everybody. Most of them don't stay in one place. They keep moving. And after receiving him, standing and offering him an honored seat and ceremonial worship, the king seated himself with a restrained mind near the rishi. So this is very important. When you sit near a great saint, what should you have? You should have a restrained mind. Why? Because you should be able to listen to whatever they say, and not only listen, but it should go within also, deep within your being. So that's why the mind should be restrained. The mind should not be running around and looking at different things or looking at different people. But most probably that is our case, where when we sit near Amma, we always, instead of watching Amma, we always are watching all the other people, who is sitting near Amma and who is not sitting near Amma, and what is that person doing and what is this person doing, and why is Amma giving so much time to this person and not to me. So all these questions arise. So, but the mind, that's what he said, the mind should be restrained. O king, addressing King Chitraketu, who was seated near him on the floor in all humility, the Rishi returned the courtesies and said to him as follows: I hope yourself and your subjects are healthy and happy. Just as a man is protected by a defensive wall of 7 aspects of Pragrati, which is nature, namely the Mahatattva, Ahankara, and the 5 Tanmatras. So also a king's defense consists of the 7 constituents of the state, the preceptor, ministers, inhabited villages, fortresses, treasury, machinery of enforcement, and allies. So just like Prakriti has the 7 walls of defense, the 5 subtle elements, the 5 aspects, the senses, and also the ego. So here also he's saying the 7 constituents of a king's defense is the preceptor, ministers, inhabited villages, fortresses, treasury, machinery of enforcement, and allies. And the king thrives by putting confidence in all these constituents of state, and they by rallying round the king. And I hope all your household and state functionaries are obedient and faithful to you, your wives, subjects, ministers, executive officers, servants, vassals, and children. He who has been able to control the mind, to him all the above mentioned are obedient. Not only that, all the worlds and their rulers come to him with tribute unfailingly. So, if you have a controlled mind, then you don't need any of these things. That's what the essence. Because he says, if you have a controlled mind, everything will be coming to you. And not only that, they will come and pay the tribute. As we see a lot of leaders coming to Amma and paying their respects. And Amma is just sitting in one place and they all come and pay their respects. So, why? Because her mind is under her control. And you do not seem to be happy with it. Why is it so? Is it due to some internal worries or due to some extraneous causes? And I see you as one with his cherished desires unfulfilled. Your face is overcast with worrying thoughts. O king, being thus questioned by the sage, who could, if he liked, intuit anything he wanted to know, Chitraketu, in his eagerness for a son, replied to him as follows, making prostrations in all humility. So he's saying a beautiful commentary here. If Rishi Angiras wanted to intuit what are the thoughts and what is the problem with Chitraketu, he could have done it very easily. But he is letting Chitraketu speak his mind. And King Chitraketu said, O all-knowing one, for yogins who have overcome all evil tendencies through austerity, knowledge, and meditation, what is there unknown about a person's inside and outside? You know the minds of all. Yet since you have now put the question, I shall give out the cause of my worry. Even though enjoying the power and plenty of an emperor, unattainable even by the world's overlords, none of these pleases me, who am eager for an issue, just as a man hungry and thirsty is not satisfied with anything but food and drink. So he's saying, look, you know everybody's mind. You are the indweller of everybody's mind. But since you asked me this question, I'll tell you. And he's saying that even though I enjoy all this power and plenty around me, one thing causes a problem because I don't have a son or an issue. So, O Great One, being issueless, I along with my ancestors will be consigned to hell. By helping us to have an issue, deign to save us from this fate. So it is considered for some of the people, especially for a householder, if you do not have a child, it is there is nobody to do the last rites. So when the last rites are not done, the spirit will not attain to the place where it has to go. So that's why he's saying it is deigned to go to hell. But in the case of spiritual people, that's not the case. So some spiritual people do not have children. Why? They purposely chose not to have children. And what if they don't have children? It doesn't matter. Why? Because they have the Guru. And the Guru is going to take care of everything. So they don't have to worry about having a child and the child doing the last rites for them. So even if they, even if they go to hell, the Guru will go to hell and bring them back. So you don't have to worry. If you listen to this and think that, oh my God, I'm a devotee of Amma, I don't have any children, what will I do? That's not the point here. So the learned, merciful and all-knowing Angiras, the son of Brahma, he was the son of Brahma. He was Brahma's Manasa Putra, that is, who came out of the imagination of Brahma, made the king prepare some sacrificial food offering and perform a sacrifice to Twashta. So you remember Twashta. And O king, the Maharishi gave the sacrificial remnant to the senior most of the king's wife, named Krita Dyuti, to eat. So Angiras made this sacrificial offering and gave it to the king's senior most wife, that is Krita Dyuti, to eat. And after the Maharishi, Angiras, the son of Brahma, told the king that he would soon have a child who could be the cause of both joy and sorrow to him, and departed. So just like Amma wants us, Angiras also told him, like, look, you will have a child, but he will bring you both sorrow and happiness. So watch out. So every time, Amma gives us warning. And whenever there is, we don't want to have warning during happiness because we can always deal with it. But when sorrow comes, we need to have warning. And Amma always gives us warning. Watch out. There is a bad time period coming. And so, same way, Angiras is telling that your son will bring you both happiness and sorrow. That queen, Krita Dyuti, by consuming that sacrificial remnant, bore a son from the seed of Chitraketu as the goddess Kritika from the fire deity Agni. So the IVF was started so much early. So they said he bore a son from the seed of Chitraketu. So, O king, the fetus that originated from the virility of the king of Surasena developed in Krita Dyuti as the disk of the moon in the bright fortnight. When in due course the time for delivery arrived, a baby was born, bringing great joy to all the inhabitants of Surasena who heard about the same. So Chitraketu, son was born through Krita Dyuti. And rejoiced at it, Chitraketu took purificatory bath, put on decorations, got the blessings of holy men for the infant, and got its birth rituals, this jata karma. Jata karma means the karma that you have to do after being born, performed. And he presented them with gifts of gold, silver, clothes, ornaments, villages, horses, elephants, and above all, 60 crores of cows. So he gave the Brahmins all those things. As clouds shower rain, so the high-minded king made gifts very liberally to all for the prosperity, fame, and longevity of his son. The king's attachment for the son whom he had obtained with such great difficulty grew day by day as a miser's attachment for hard-earned wealth. So it's a beautiful example here. Just like a miser has so much of attachment for his hard-earned wealth, he's saying that the king, Chitraketu, became attached to his son. The mother Kritadyuti too developed towards her son attachment that verged on infatuation, while the grief of her co-wives for their childless condition also began to intensify. So now Kritadyuti was so happy, but all the other wives started becoming sad and started groaning and complaining. And Chitraketu now ceased to have for his childless wives the same degree of love that he developed for the one whose child he could now fondle with affection every day. So what happened? The other wives were not receiving enough attention from the king Chitraketu. So he did not have that same degree of love for them. So these co-wives suffered intensely from the combined effect of their envy towards Kritadyuti, their inferiority complex, their childlessness, and the king's neglect of them. So now, because the king's neglect was there, the Kritadyuti, they were very envious of Kritadyuti because she had a child and they did not have child. So, and because they did not have child, that complex, inferiority complex was also there. So it developed into really a volcano. Woe unto the woman who is childless, unfortunate, devoid of her husband's confidence, and looked down upon as a maidservant by her co-wife who has become a mother. Maidservants who receive the recognition of their masters again and again for service have no cause to be aggrieved. But alas for us, unfortunate beings who are like maidservants of a maidservant, so these co-wives grieved. So they were complaining, saying that, we don't even get the treatment of a maidservant. And great was the fire of anger and jealousy generated in them at the sight of their co-wife's treasure of a child, while the indifference which the king developed towards them helped to fan the flame of that fire. So deprived of all goodness and discriminative intelligence due to jealousy and animosity, and prompted by their intolerant hatred for the faithless king, these cruel-hearted women administered poison to the infant. So what they do? So they plotted to kill the child and gave poison to the child. Kritadyuti, unaware of the wicked act of her co-wives, was under the impression that the child was sleeping and kept herself busy with domestic work. So Kritadyuti, the mother, thought the child was sleeping, let the child sleep for some time. But later, the intelligent Kritadyuti felt that the child was asleep for too long a period, and so called her maid to bring the child. On approaching the child on its bed, the maid was shocked to see the infant with pupils turned up and its vital forces, senses, and mind not functioning. She fell down screaming, "Alas, dead I am." Hearing the loud and piteous cries of the woman who was beating her breast, the queen Kritadyuti went to her side only to be shocked to see her child most unexpectedly lying dead. Immediately she fell down and swooned out of her overwhelming grief, her hair disheveled and clothes in disarray. Hearing the cries, men and women living in the palace all came to the spot and joined the others in crying with an equal measure of anguish and sorrow. Those responsible for the dastardly act also shed crocodile tears and joined the party of mourners. So all the other wives also joined and started crying, shedding crocodile tears. Stunned with the uncontrollable grief, on hearing about the most unexpected and inexplicable death of his beloved son, the king, attended by his officers and advisers, came to the spot with great difficulty, almost blind with grief, and often stumbling and falling on the way. And the king, whose locks and garments had become loose, fell at the feet of the dead child. He was sighing deeply, and his voice was choked with sobs. Seeing her only child dead, and her husband overwhelmed with grief on account of that, the queen began to lament variously, recounting her woes and causing great anguish in the hearts of the ministers and other people. The torrential flow of tears mixed with the collyrium in her eyes fell on her breasts and mingled with the red saffron applied thereon. And she began to moan aloud in a voice, "O Creator, you who function contrary to your O Creator, you who function contrary to your own creative activity, must indeed be unbelievably foolish. The death of a very young person, while old individuals are left behind, is an instance to that point. If you are doing this deliberately and not out of foolishness, as said before, you will be distinguishing yourself as an enemy of your own creatures. If it is said that in birth and in death there is no such rule based on the age of individuals, they being determined by the karma of the jivas, then you are cutting asunder the bond of affection which you have yourself generated for the multiplication of the species. For people will abstain from having children if such dire consequences attend on having them. O son, it does not befit you to desert me, your mother, afflicted and helpless. Look at your sorrow-stricken father also. With your help, we could have easily got over the hell which issueless people cannot cross. Do not go far away with the merciless Yama. Oh, my dear child, get up. Other children are calling you to play. You may have been sleeping long and must be hungry now. So take food, have your feed at the breast, and comfort us, you near and dear ones. O son, my unfortunate self misses your face with its charming, childlike and placid look. Have you been taken by the pitiless Yama to that land from which there is no return? I am not able to hear your sweet, indistinct speech. So, we know this when somebody becomes so much entrenched in sorrow, this is what happens. First of all, the first thing that happens is you lose your discrimination. And when the discrimination is lost, then you start blaming everybody, including God or including Guru, Amma, saying, see, how she has constructed all those words against God. And she's saying that you function contrary to your own creativity. Because, like old people can die, but when young people die, that is contrary to your whole purpose of creation. And then she said, okay, you might have done it out of foolishness, but if you do not do out of foolishness, you are creating an enemy of your own creatures. Because why? Is such people, when they see that when children are dying at such a young age, they don't want to have children. So you are actually creating such a perfect situation where you are defeating your own purpose of creation. So like this, she's arguing against God himself. And then she's so entrenched in sorrow that she's calling out to the child to get up. And Sri Shuka said, sorrowing with his wife, who was indulging in such words of lamentation, King Chitraketu burst forth into loud wails. All their relatives, men and women, gathered there, joined the couple in their wailing. Everything bore the impress of death. Seeing that group of sorrowing people, leaderless and reduced to the state of inertness, the two sages, Angiras and Narada, appeared on the scene. So, whenever there is a beautiful thing that happens, or whenever there is sorrow, you know that the presence of the great saints will be there. So now they are stricken with so much grief that both Angiras and Narada, both the great saints, appear on that scene. And Sri Shuka said, instructing the king who was lying like a corpse by the side of the dead body of his son, the sages spoke to him the following words of wisdom. So in spite of having so much of sorrow and knowing that the king may not listen because his mind is full of sorrow and he doesn't want to listen to words of wisdom, so they would rather give so much of advice. So they said, O great king, he for whom you are mourning, what is he to you? In this flux of creation, how were you related to the dead child in the previous birth, and what is it to be the relation in future births? So the idea is that these relations are never the same in different births. There may be no relation, or there may be the reverse relationship, the father being reborn as the son. And just as grains of sand come together and separate in a current of water, so are living beings united and separated by the flow of time. And just as sprouts may sometimes grow from seeds and sometimes not, so do offspring come sometimes out of parents and sometimes do not, as dictated by the Lord's Maya. Parental relation need not be taken more seriously than that between seeds and sprouts, is what he's saying. And just as I, you, and all these creatures did not exist before birth and will not exist after death, so they do not exist even now. The Lord of all, the unoriginated being, brought out of himself the creative categories by the exercise of his inherent power. And with these categories that are dependent on him, he performs the work of creation, preservation, and dissolution of all beings held absolutely under his control. In creation, he has no object to gain as a child in a play. So just going back, he's saying, who is this child? Who was this child? How was he related to you? So, who was he in his previous birth? Who were you in your previous birth? You might be his son. And now you are the father, and he is reborn as a son. And saying just a beautiful example, just like the grains of sand come together in a current of water and then separate, so are the living beings united and separated by the flow of time. And just like sprouts sometimes grow out of seeds and sometimes not, so these parental relationships should not be taken seriously. And he's saying all these creatures, just as you and all these creatures did not exist before birth, meaning he did not exist, meaning that body did not exist. and will not exist after death. So it's only a period of time that they exist. So you are just feeling that, having that feeling that it's only existing right now. It does not exist even now. So he's saying that the Lord, with his inherent power, exercises these three things, that is creation, preservation, and dissolution. And in creation, he has no object to gain as in a child in a play. O king, a man is born to the body of a father through the body of the mother, just as a seed is grown from an earlier seed. Thus the body changes while the indwelling soul remains the same, like the causal categories of objects. So it's beautiful. Saying like, the body of the soul, the Atman, keeps changing from one mother to another mother, or which is caused by a father to another father. But it just like the seed that is indwelling inside the fruit, and then it grows from another seed. So what happens is the soul remains the same. Just as the distinction made between the universal and the particular is an assumption, so also the distinction between the spirit and the body and their coming together is an assumption. The soul alone is the abiding reality. The concomitance between the two is no proof that the spirit dies with the body. So he's saying the soul alone is the reality. Just because they come together, the body and the soul comes together, it's always an assumption. They don't come together. But he's saying there's no proof that the spirit, that is the Atman, dies with the body. So, hearing this, King Chitraketu, Sri Shuka said, thus comforted by the sages, King Chitraketu wiped his sorrow-stricken face and said, who may you be that have come here disguised as bare-bodied wanderers, Avadutas? So he could not even recognize them, that it was Angiras and Narada. So he's saying, you have come here and I don't recognize you. But possessing the highest wisdom and deserving the first rank amongst those called great. So, at that point, it's so wonderful because even at the time of sorrow, he's receiving their teaching. And holy men dear to the Lord move about in the world, hiding their greatness under the veil of abnormal looks and ways in order to bless worldly-minded people like myself. So Sanat Kumara and his group of Narada, Ribu, Angiras, so all these names, these and many other sages go about the world in order to bestow spiritual knowledge on others. Therefore, it is befitting that you hold this lamp of wisdom and remove the darkness of one like me, walking in ignorance like a village swine. So he's comparing himself like a village swine, a pig who is just walking around in the dirt and not knowing what is right and what is wrong. So that is the beauty about it, is humility. So the Rishi Angiras said, O king, I am that Angiras who helped you to obtain a child. So this is the all-knowing and worshipful sage Narada, the son of Brahma. So that's how they reveal. So when Angiras gave the child, what did he say? You will have happiness and sorrow from the child. So this is the nature of, that's why Amma says, this is the nature of all worldly objects. You will have both happiness as well as sorrow. So you should be, when you get something which you wanted, which you desired so much, there is so much of happiness that you get. But soon that happiness turns into sorrow. So this is the beautiful teaching here. And he says that, we have arrived here thinking of you and to bless you, who are now submerged in grief arising from this loss of a son, a fate which a votary of holy men and a devotee of the Lord like you does not deserve. So you don't deserve the fate. That is correct. So even when I visited you earlier, I wanted to impart to you, but finding that you were then more intent on having an issue, I helped you to get one. So what was the sage's intention of visiting, Angiras's intention of visiting Chitraketu? It was to impart that divine knowledge. But he says, that I could not give you that knowledge at that time. Why? Because there was one strong desire in your mind that you wanted to have a son. So I could not impart that knowledge at that time. Ramana Maharshi always says this. When one devotee asked him this question, Bhagavan, that why do you give all these things that people ask? So Ramana Bhagavan beautifully answered. And he said, I'll give them because one day they will stop asking and then ask me, what do I want to give, really? So this is all, when you take the case of Amma also, when people who do not have children, or people who do not have a good job, or people who are having so many problems in their life, when they ask for all these worldly objects and achievements, Amma wants to give them. Why? Because one day they will ask for that supreme knowledge and say, that's enough. I've had enough of all these things. So give me what you want to give me. So you have now understood the kind of sorrow that people with children are likely to suffer from. All other kinds of worldly relationships and attainments too, whether they be related to wife, houses, wealth, power, objects of enjoyment, land, kingdom and its majesties, army, treasury, servants, ministers, and allies are causes of sorrow, pride, fear, and worry. So all these things will bring you what? There's only one thing that is going to bring you, which is pride, fear, and worry. And they are fleeting phenomena like a castle in the air and have no ultimacy, as in the case of experiences caused by dream, magic, and reverie. So he's saying that, it's all these things have actually no substance, because it's like experiencing something in dream. You're just dreaming that you have all these things. So there is a beautiful story of King, the great king. So what he does is, when the king was sleeping, he had a dream, and in the dream what happened was, he was dreaming that suddenly he had become a beggar. And what happened is, King Janaka dreamt that he was a beggar and walking around in his own kingdom. And when he woke up, he had this question: who am I? Am I a king who's dreaming to be a beggar, or am I really a beggar who's dreaming to be a king? This was a very pertinent question that he asked. And nobody could give the answer until his guru, Ashtavakra, came. And there's a beautiful Ashtavakra Gita that was his advice given to King Janaka. And so he's saying that, this is all like that dream. You're just dreaming. And all these objects of enjoyment which have no substantiality are merely creations of the mind, for they are experienced one moment and are gone in the next. It may be said that they are the products of one's meritorious and evil actions. No, It is from the mind engaged in the constant thoughts arising from the tendencies acquired from previous actions that various future actions and their results bring. So it's such a beautiful explanation. You think all these things are real. But how does it come? Because it's all coming from the mind. And mind is nothing but a bunch of thoughts. And how does these tendencies come? Because of your previous associations with some of the things. So how do you know it is coming from the mind? So you know, when you are in a state of deep sleep, when there is no mind, when there is the absence of mind, is there any desires? And do you want to be a king, or do you want to be an actress or an actor, or you want to be the football player? Nothing. You're so happy, you're content, completely content, and you don't want anything. Why? Because you're full, you're whole, in sleep. But the moment you wake up, that's when we want coffee or tea. So these things, he's saying that it's arising from the mind. And these are thoughts, these are just dreams that the mind is creating. And you are actually either enjoying or suffering from your previous experiences. So this body of man, constituted of material substances, sense organs and organs of action, is the cause of difficulties and sorrows of various kinds. Therefore, meditate on the Atman with a peaceful mind and get rid of the idea of permanency you have in regard to the world of duality. So what should you do? He's just giving the beautiful explanation. Meditate on the permanent one. What is permanent? The Atman, the Supreme Conscious. And understand the impermanency. And remove that projection that you have done. You know, many a case what happens? Why do we feel that all these things in this world are going to remain forever with me? Because we are having the wrong projection. We know somewhere in our soul that we know that something is permanent. But we actually what we do is we objectify that permanency and we put it on the worldly objects. And think that this body is going to be permanent. All the objects, all the people around me are going to be permanent. And this body will remain ever young. And this is going to be beautiful. So, we are imposing that permanency on these impermanent things, for which there is no permanency, and it will destroy after some time. And it will perish. And when it perishes, that's when we become sad. So he's saying, this world of duality, understand, it is not permanent. So Sri Narada said, receive from me with one pointed mind the mantra that I shall impart you. Now, what happened? Now he is ready. Chitraketu is ready to receive the mantra. He is ready for getting the spiritual blessings from both the saints. So earlier, because of his desire for his child, what happened was he had so much of desire in his mind that he could not receive that spiritual teaching. It's like Amma's example, like a cup which is turned upside down and you keep pouring and pouring, the cup does not get filled. You have to turn the cup and keep it properly so that it receives. So similarly, the mind was not at that time not ready to receive. Now it is ready. And he says, Sri Narada says that I will give you a mantra. It brings about the highest good of man and gives the experience of sankarshana to those who meditate on it with concentration for a week. Sankarshana is another name of Vishnu, which means one who attracts everybody to him. So he's saying, meditate on it. O king, it was by taking refuge at his feet that a great one like Parameswara got over the ignorance-born identification with the body, and attained to that state of spiritual power and glory, unequaled and unsurpassed, that is His. You too will attain to it if you worship Him with a devout heart. So, he's saying that even a great person like Lord Shiva got over his ignorance-born identification with the body. How? By taking refuge at the feet of the Lord. So again, there might be questions and doubts, about who is Shiva and why did he do it and all these things. So here we have to understand Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu and all these things, deities are only nothing but the representation of the Supreme Consciousness. So they are nothing but just like the bulb which expresses electricity, or the fan that produces air by the power of the electric current that is flowing through it. So similarly, we have created Parameshwara, Lord Shiva, through our mind. So even Parameshwara was identified with the body. So he too got over the identification by the worship. So this is what happens here. And they are giving him the beautiful sermons and the advice, spiritual advice. But why? Because now Chitraketu is filled with sorrow in his heart. And because of the sorrow, what happens? He realized the impermanence of the world. So many a times we ask this question, why does Amma give us sorrow? Right? Why does she give us all these things? And one of the teachings, the greatest teaching of sorrow is the greatest teacher. That's why Kunti, the mother of Pandavas, used to tell Lord Krishna, give me only sorrow. Don't give me joy. Because why? Because only in sorrow will I think about you all the time. And if you look at it, that's what happens. In sorrow, we always think about more and more about Amma, our Guru, or the Lord, or God. And not only that, sorrow is the greatest teacher, because, there was a beautiful story said by a saint, which I think I had said this earlier, so forgive me if you have heard it. Once there was a great saint who was narrating this story, and he was saying that when he was young, he was studying in the second grade or third grade, he used to be really tall and hefty, and so he was the biggest child in his class. So naturally what happened, he started bullying other kids, the smaller kids. So one day there was a small puny little kid sitting next to him. So purposely what he did, he pulled the kid's pencil. In those days they were writing with pencils. So he took his pencil, and not only that, poked him on his stomach as soon as the class was over. So the child started crying. And the bully, the big child, would not give the pencil back to him. So the child was imploring, the small child was imploring to the big one, who later became a saint, asking him for the pencil. He said, if I go home without pencil, my mother will beat me. So please give me back. But he wouldn't give. So he kept on walking until they reached the bully's home. And so the saint's mother saw that these two children coming, her own child being followed by this small child who was crying. So she went, and naturally what she did was she went and took the child who was crying and asked the child what is the reason why he's crying. So the child said, look, that person, that is her son, not only snatched the pencil from me, but also poked me on my stomach and would not give me the pencil back. And if I go back home, my mother is going to give me a tough time. So the mother asked her own son, did you do this? Where is the pencil? So the child was, her son was nervous when the mother asked, so give back the pencil. So the mother immediately took her son and locked him inside a room. And then she took the small little boy who was crying and consoled him and gave him some food, nice sweets to eat, and sent him back home happily with the pencil, with 2 other pencils. And then she came back. She came back, opened the room, and she took her son and gave like 2 nice thrashings to him. And he said later, when he became the saint, he said, my mother made so many doshas, so many idlis, so many sweets. I don't remember what all she gave me, but I do remember those 2 thrashings that she gave me that day. So he said, that is why sorrow is the greatest teacher. We always remember the bad times that we have. And especially if we get something bad from a person who's supposed to give us something or make us feel good, and we expect so much from a person, and if that person does something bad to us, we always remember that. We don't remember all the things that they might have done, the things that they have helped us both financially and physically, but maybe just one word is enough from their mouth. If they say, oh, you are stupid, or you're such a cruel person, that's enough to just completely wipe off all the good things they have done. So one thing is, as I said, the suffering. Coming back to the point, the suffering is the greatest teacher. And suffering teaches us so many lessons. And just like Chitraketu, he was ready because of that suffering alone. Because he had to fulfill his desire to have a child, and then the loss of the child made him realize the impermanency of the world. So we'll see the rest of it in the next session. Om Amriteshwariya Namah. So I just wanted to make a quick announcement. So the next week, it will be on Monday, the 12th, instead of Tuesday. So just a reminder. But anyway, the classes will be online for some time. Om Amriteshwariya Namah.
अमृतानंदमयी सततं मम हृदि वसता
जय बोलो सद्गुरु माता अमृतानंदमयी देवी की असतो मा सद्गमय
तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु। लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु। लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु। ॐ शान्ति